from under my blankets, so it's quiet enough to hear me. This is Reimagining Hustle, a podcast for entrepreneurial parents creating a life where business and parenthood live peacefully in the same space. I'm your host, Roxanne Market, a mom of two, micro-business coach, and serial entrepreneur on a journey to prove that it really is possible to do what you love without sacrificing all of your precious time. Let's do this. Welcome back to Reimagining Hustle. You have already met my guest once before. I have the wonderful Lyndall Farley with me. Lyndall, I am beyond excited to have you back. And I want to just give my listeners just a little sneak peek into the email conversations that we've had over the last few weeks. So when we spoke with you last, you had just had your baby. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
You just had her.
She was 2 months old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So just itty bitty baby.
Tiny.
Yeah. And so out of the blue, you emailed me and I was telling you earlier, my kids were in the room when I got your email and I squealed and they were like, "Mom, are you okay?" And I'm like, "You don't understand. One of my favorite people just emailed me and said, please, can we do a follow-up podcast because things have changed and let's talk again." Lyndall, I'm so excited to have you back. Welcome.
And I'm so excited to be back because I was thinking of doing podcasts again, just ramping things up again. And then I was like, okay, which ones would I want to go and do again? I definitely Roxanne, top of the list. It was the best podcast. And it was funny because I felt like I was, talking about the stuff I talk about, but I was getting so much of it out of the conversation myself. I was learning and growing. It just in half an hour, and we hung out the podcast, and I was like, "Whoa!"
That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. So thank you. So I'm going to catch. So you have not listened to Lyndall before. Lyndall is a sabbatical coach, and I know things have shifted a little bit for you, and we'll get into all of it. But when we last spoke, I was preparing for my big move around the world to Japan. And your podcast actually was the thing that for me, I hung up with our call and was like, okay, it actually the world will not implode if I take 3 months off or 6 months off.
Yeah.
And it really you gave me the courage to email all my clients. I emailed them that week and said, heads up, we're doing this. And so you made such an impact on me. So thank you for that.
Oh,
so
good.
catch us up to speed. Tell us so much has changed. Your baby is older. So you're full on different. It's a whole different world being a mom. I feel like every stage is different, but your work has shifted a little bit too. So can I just toss it at you and say, please just tell me everything?
Yeah, it's always one of those funny things because you have to remember back to when Adeline was 2 months old and she's now 18 months old, right? And it's like, wow, that's quite okay, right? We have to go back and remember what happened since then. And basically the shorter answer is a lot.
Yes.
So
everything.
So I mean, I was sort of let's say failing to be on maternity leave when we first had our podcast. I was like, yeah, I should be on maternity leave, but I just want to keep on doing all these things because they're fun. And so I was on maternity leave when we spoke, and I, coming to grips with, being a mother and what that meant for my business and all this kind of stuff. And I think that what's kind of so I was on maternity leave, but I was still doing little bits of business stuff on the side, mostly because I enjoyed it and it gave me energy and it made me feel like a human, not just a milk machine,
Mm-hmm.
And so that was it was better for me to stay connected to that. And so I know that doesn't work for everyone, but for me, I needed to stay connected to my business and I needed to be able to choose which bits and pieces to take. And so, And then when Adeline was about 7 months old, we headed off on our own adventure, which was our family sabbatical. And the reason for that was because she was born in the middle of COVID in lockdown. And she had literally only met one family member and a couple of friends. That's all that. And our family, we live in Amsterdam. I'm Australian. My husband's American. So our family is literally scattered all over the world. And, nobody had been part of the pregnancy. Nobody had even met her. And so the goal of the sabbatical was to have her meet all of her family around the world. Now, the challenge of this is obviously we were traveling around the world in the middle of a global pandemic with a baby. So
No problem,
some
right? Like,
people,
it's
no
fine.
problem.
It's
We'll just take it
fine.
on. No problem. And so, I mean, we knew that that would throw up hurdles and it did, right? But it, like, we were in Barbados and my husband got COVID and then like the
Oh,
whole, a it was a, it was a bad situation.
yeah.
Anyway, we got out of there. We managed to escape back to Miami. Um, but also then we needed to, so we spent 6 weeks traveling from the all the entire west coast of America in an RV, which was amazing. It was the best adventure ever,
That's
but it was also
incredible.
exhausting with
With
the baby.
a baby? Sure,
With
like,
the baby. Yeah.
sure.
So it was a great adventure, but exhausting. And then we got to Kansas, she met her great grandparents, and that
Oh,
was so special to us because we don't know if she's gonna get to meet them again.
right.
And then and all of the family. And then Barbados, and then great for a moment and then really not great for
Sure.
a
Yeah,
moment.
I mean, to have
And
COVID
then
there and, like, in the middle of all this, woo!
yeah, it was also just it wasn't really COVID per se. It was just the bureaucracy and the travel
Uh,
restrictions and the testing, and it was all of the issues that come with the actual kind of control of it.
I got you.
Anyway, and then we had to try and fly into Australia. And for people who don't know, Australia over COVID became Fortress Australia, which was so basically they shut down to the rest
Yeah.
of the world and you just could not get in. But we had a small window where we could get in. We managed to get in. And then she met all of the Australian family, which was, amazing. And so that's kind of been my sort of and then throughout the sabbatical, also doing little bits and pieces of business stuff, mostly taking on the individuals, but then I had a couple of corporate projects come to me, and I just kind of had to try them on and go, do I really want to do this? Like the opportunity cost of me doing this means that I'm going to spend less time with my family, and I'm like, no. So I actually just passed them off to other people in my network and
Yeah.
said no to things, which was great. So yeah, I really took the sabbatical and then got back to Amsterdam. Of course, because we do things in really easy ways. So when we were in Australia, we sold our apartment in Amsterdam to the tenant who was in it. And
Oh my
then
word.
because the tenant was already in it, we had nowhere to live. So then we had to rent a place sight unseen from Australia in Amsterdam. And then we had to remotely coordinate removalists to move our stuff out of the apartment into the new house. And so, you
Oh
know,
my word. Linda, I didn't even know that part of the story was
I
coming.
know. Yeah. Surprise. So yeah, so that took up a bit of energy towards the end of the sabbatical. And then we had to, move into so literally we got back to Amsterdam after 24 hours on a plane with a baby. And we literally got into a cab and went, right, what's the address? And they were like, oh, so you're not going home? And like, well, we're going home, but we've never seen it before. And he's like, right.
Is this still
So
suspicious?
and we're like rocking up to our home
Yeah.
and we're like, is this it? Yeah, I think this is it. Okay. All right.
My word.
And
Oh
yeah,
my
we
word.
had someone meeting us with the keys. We walk in the door and go, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, I could live here. This will be fine.
Live here. Lucky because I'm signed a 2-year contract. Anyway, so,
Oh my word. Oh my
so
word.
challenges along
Yeah.
the way.
Oh my word. Okay,
Yeah.
so the sabbatical you took, how long was the sabbatical? Because I know the thing that I remember last from our last conversation, you blew my mind is that you think about like a sabbatical for a tenured professor, right? You're going to take a year off
Mhm.
and do something, but you kind of introduced this idea that a sabbatical could mean a month, it could mean 3 months, it could
Yeah.
mean 6 months. So how long was this
Yeah.
sabbatical that you took?
So this sabbatical was 6 months
Okay.
because we had a long time to plan it. My husband was also on sabbatical,
Okay.
and we had a lot of things that we needed to do. Right, we
Yeah.
had to, and we needed to travel slower as well because it
Sure.
was family sabbatical and we had a baby. Right, But I've taken this with my 11th sabbatical. And
Okay.
so all of my previous sabbaticals have either been with just my husband or, most of them have been independent travel on my own
Okay.
or not even travel, just independent sabbatical. And so those have ranged from a month
Mhm.
to a year, right? And
Okay.
so a sabbatical really is just an extended break from work to recharge and
Mhm.
to do something different, to step out of the daily routine and
Yeah.
to learn and grow and follow your passions. And so
Yes.
that's what we were doing.
Oh,
Yeah.
my word. So this is the first sabbatical as a family of 3. This is Adeline's first sabbatical. We'll start her count young,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it was really different
Yeah.
because, yeah, is that what you're gonna ask?
I
Yeah.
was I yeah, I
Yeah,
wanna
we're
know, like,
vibing.
what
We're
made it
vibing.
I know, I know, right? I wanna know what made this, um, different, what was the same kind of, planning for a family versus, I mean, obviously, an individual, that's gonna be different, but even you and your husband, how is this different?
So, a family sabbatical is really different because one of the sort of key tenets of recharging on sabbatical is that for an individual is that you have autonomy and control over your time. And that is like fundamentally one of the things that we don't get a lot of in life. Because work demands, whatever the demands of your time are. And so it's a chance to get back the control over your time. And so, and that in itself, psychologically, is something that helps to recharge us. And so, in a family sabbatical, first of all, you've got compromises because there's multiple members, and then you chuck in a baby, and you're like, well, yeah.
And any
So,
plan you had anyway is gonna go out the window.
yeah, it's like when you have a plan and then you chuck in the word baby, and you're like, ha ha ha, funny. Yeah. And so, yeah, so it just required a complete sort of rejigging of our thinking, right? And so, as I said, I think I said in the beginning, the goal of the sabbatical was for Adeline to meet her family around the world. And
Mhm.
it wasn't for us to kind of, get that deep rejuvenation recharge, right? And
Yeah, I
so
got you.
it it was like, okay, you can have different purposes of sabbaticals. And as an individual, most people are getting this deep rejuvenation and insights about themselves and, this kind of real time breakaway.
Mhm.
But as a family, the goal is different. You can
Mm.
still end up recharging, but you do it in a very different way. And so what I knew all of this, but it was one thing to know it intellectually and then to live it. And so what we
Sure.
learned throughout this was that even though we tried to slow things down, we weren't going slow enough. Like we had to slow it down even
Oh.
more. Like we took our plan of what we thought was slow travel, and then we needed to slow,
Slow
halve it
down.
again.
Oh my
Yeah,
word.
exactly.
So what did
Even
that look
slower.
like in practice? Because obviously there's like this
Yeah.
theoretical bit, right? But in practice, what does that look like? How did that change?
Well, so what happened was as we were traveling down the coast from Seattle to San Diego, that's like 3,000 miles or 2,000. It's a
Yeah.
long way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and also we were using Adeline's, she was still doing 2 naps. And so we were
Okay.
using Adeline's naps as the drive time. And so
Mhm.
we get 1 hour, 1.5 hours in the morning and 1.5 hours in the afternoon. And so we were really only able to travel sort of 3 hours a day. But basically, we were in this big RV. So you're like a little snail. Your home is just on your back. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
And so we thought, oh yeah, no problem. You just do 3 hours or, every couple of days, just do 3 hours and we'll just meander our way down. But even just the process of packing up the van to drive, right, was actually took quite a bit of effort, right? And so it wasn't just like, okay, have some breakfast and then off we go. It was like, okay, then we have to put the sides in, we have to pack the thing away, we have to do the kitchen, and we have to blah, blah, blah. And so all of that daily was just, it was too much. So we ended up having to just have longer periods of time in one place instead of
Oh.
kind of, so we'd have to go for driving for a longer distance over one day. to get sort of further down the coast, but then stay there for a couple of days,
I
you know?
see. Hmm.
And so it was just a different mode of travel. So by the time we got to San Diego, we were like, okay, we are not doing any 1 night or 2 night stays, max, like minimum 3 nights, wherever we stay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And then that helped us because then we were like, okay, for the rest of our sabbatical, we're not going to be in the RV, but we're going to have accommodation that we've booked. So, but we were like minimum 2 weeks everywhere. Like,
Okay.
we're not like, so, and that was, and that really is what we did. I mean, it was actually more like a month in
Hmm.
places, you know? And so, yeah, that just framed, how we needed to travel in order to actually get what we needed out of the time, right? Which was like less stress, less sort of transiting with a baby, because that's what took the energy. It was the moving that took the energy.
Yeah.
Um, and then so travel aside, what my husband and I also needed to do was basically contracting, like contracting with each other of like, okay, I need time out, you need time out. How do we schedule the day so that we called it unicorn time. So
Oh.
you've got some unicorn time, I've got some unicorn time. And so we came up with this schedule basically. My husband and I are very structured. This would not work for everyone, but
Yeah.
this is the way we
This
worked it.
works for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had sort of two kind of like on day, off day schedule, basically. And so on the on day, you were doing more of the childcare and all this kind of stuff. Like,
Oh.
not you still had some breaks because if
Sure.
you're 24 hours, childcare, obviously it's tiring. But it was then the other person got their unicorn space, right? And so
Hmm.
my husband was working on some projects of his own. I was trying to think through what's the next phase of this business. And we wanted that time and space to be able to, have our unicorn time.
Yeah.
But that needed us to be both on board with that and to contract with each other about how this worked. And then whenever we were with family, we were like, babysitters.
Yes. I
Ah,
do miss the family babysitting.
exactly. And so then we could have couple time, right? And so
Yeah.
it was remarkable how much scheduling was required on basically an hour to hour basis in order to get what we needed out of the sabbatical. And so that is the huge difference between the family sabbatical and the individual sabbatical. It's just that intentionality and the contracting with your partner
Hmm.
and like the willingness to make it work.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. It's so interesting hearing you talk first about the travel piece of it. As you described it, I thought this is exactly what I tell my clients when I tell them they need to batch things, right? Is like if
Yeah.
it's going to take all the setup to prepare social media graphics, then do
Yeah.
a bunch of them at a time to
Yeah.
maximize that time. And so that's interesting because I'd never thought about that as far as travel is concerned, but it makes so
Yeah.
much sense. And I have to
Yeah. You're
ask
right. We were
uni
batching.
yeah, you were batching your driving, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to ask the unicorn time, is that from Fair Play, Eve Rodsky's Fair Play?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I have the deck actually like sitting. I'm going to show you like this is an
Oh,
audio
yeah.
podcast, but like we have our deck, right? Our Fair Play deck. So this is not an ad, but oh my word, if you are in a coupled relationship, you need fair play in your life. It is life
So
changing.
it really is. We did it on sabbatical,
Mhm.
because by that stage we were a year into having Adeline,
Yeah.
and already like so first of all, I mean, hat goes off to my husband. He found Fair Play because
Oh.
before well, it was recommended to him because he was on like an inclusion and diversity
Oh.
panel for something before he went on sabbatical, and they were talking about it. And he was like, "Oh, that's interesting." He brings Fair Play to me and goes, "We need to do this."
You
And
have a
I'm
rare
like,
one. You have a rare
I
one.
know. I know. I was like, let me step back
Yeah.
from the situation for a second and just acknowledge how much of a superstar husband you are right now. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So when your husband brings you fair play, you're like, okay, he's a
Sure.
keeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Seriously.
Yeah. Anyway, but fair play, basically, it did change our life, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you take that context of my husband brings fair play to me, right? So we're already in a very equality is really the basis of our marriage. Like
Yeah.
we've always been very um, high on that. But it was interesting because, yeah, we had tried not to fall into those gender roles. Really, I was really
So
trying not to fall
hard.
into them. And
Yes.
then I went into the fair play exercise. And for people who don't know what it is,
Yeah.
you basically divide up all of the daily tasks and kind of things that you need to do in order to run a family,
Mhm.
right? You
Yeah.
divide them up and you write them all down on cards. And then you basically figure out, okay, who's holding which card.
Yes.
And then that allows you to reallocate cards
Yes.
in
Yes.
order to get a fair play of the deck, right?
Yes.
And anyway, so we did the initial exercise of just writing down all the work that needs to be done in our family. And then, yeah, we divided it up. And I literally, we divided it up in terms of what's the current state,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really thought, okay, I probably am probably like a little bit over 50% and you're a little bit under
Yeah.
50%. That's my guess as to how it's going to go. It was like 78% was in my deck,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, "Oh my god, yes, I do that. Oh my god, yes, I do that. Oh my god, yes, I do that." And that allowed us to, have, this honest conversation about,
Yeah.
yeah, this is why I feel so busy all the time. And it's not the doing of it, it's the mental
The
labor of
mental load of it. Yes.
keeping everything in check. And so we did this on Fair Play. We were in Cairns in Australia
Mhm.
and because we had babysitters. And so
Yes.
we took ourselves away for a
Oh,
weekend in a lovely resort by the beach. And then we sat down and it took a long time. Like
it
it took
does
a
take
long
some time.
time,
Yeah.
good part of a day.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then we redivided it. And that is the way we now live our life.
Ugh.
And it changed our life. It really changed our life because I had all of this load of what they call the daily grind
Yeah.
task, all of this load taken off me. And I was like, oh my gosh. But the funniest thing is I then started feeling guilty. I'm like, I intellectually know this is a 50-50 split, but I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like it was so random,
Oh,
but
yes. Yes.
life
Oh, I
changing.
love that you did
Yeah.
that. So this is like our total detour to fair play. So I will
Yeah.
make sure because this is something I feel really strongly. There are people in my life who I'm like, please, like, how can I bring this up without telling them that I need to bring this up for them and their marriages, right? So thank you for
I
making this.
know.
I'm like,
I
fingers
know.
crossed that
I
they're gonna
know.
listen to this episode. So I can't
Yeah.
name them by names, but if you're one of my
Mm.
close friends, you need this book in your life. Um, right? But there is a book. So the book is called Fair Play and it's Eve
Yeah.
Rodsky. And there's also a deck of cards that you can purchase as well.
Yeah. We
But
we
you
didn't
can
even
make your
buy.
own, right? You can make your
Yeah,
own.
we didn't
Mhm.
even because we were on the road, right? So we didn't
Yeah. So you
like
couldn't.
have
Yeah.
anywhere for them to be posted to.
Yeah.
And so we literally just got, the index cards,
Yes.
the
Yes.
old fashioned.
Yeah. Like three
You
by
can
five
still
cards.
buy
Yeah.
those.
Mhm.
Yeah, still buy those.
Yeah.
And we just wrote it down.
Love
It
it.
really
Love it.
it was great. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we've still got them. And so okay, to finish it off, I
Yes.
think fair play is good, but you have to keep on revisiting it
You
because we're
do.
now yeah,
Yes.
because we're now 6 months down the track.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that little creepy things had kind of crept in, right? And we
Yes.
looked at the deck again and we looked at which, the even 50-50 split. And then like I had to hold up a couple of cards and go, this is in your deck. I'm doing this.
Ah.
You need to take this card
Yeah.
because just kind of accidentally forgotten that like you were meant to be doing this.
Right.
And I've actually been picking it up, and it not through anyone's fault, but it's just
No, just
those
kind of those yeah, it takes a
deep
lot of conscious
ingrained.
effort to have equality there that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it gives you the avenue to have the conversation about it. And
Yes.
I mean, I really don't know what you would do if you didn't have a willing partner because your partner has to value equality. And
Yes.
because it's actually what most partners, and I'm saying partner, but most of the time it's the male partner.
Right.
If we want to be, I guess that's sexist, but well, I don't know.
There's I mean, it's true, right? Like it definitely there are things that fall outside of that kind of
Yeah.
norm, but we do fall into these gender norms. And so
Yeah,
I yeah.
I don't, we just fall into these gender
Right.
stereotypes, right? And it's really, it takes a lot of conscious effort to pull
Yeah.
yourself out of that gender stereotype. But it requires the husband to value equality
Yes.
so much that he's willing to take on more.
Right.
So if you have like a partner who is not at all willing to take on more because they've got a really good wicket,
Right. Right.
because it's really quite great that
Very
the
convenient.
partner's doing it all, very convenient. So I don't know what you would do if you're in that situation.
If you I would say if you are in that situation, you have to find a good therapist fast. And even if you can't
Yeah,
find a good couples therapist, find the therapist for you. Like if you are the one who
yeah,
feels like that it's really unequal in your partnership, find a therapist like
yeah,
yesterday. And I know it's
yeah,
hard. I know it's hard, but I honestly
yeah.
think that
It's true.
that's the only
Yeah,
solution is to find because there is the fair play is it can't fix that, right? It can fix the
yeah,
equality side of things. But and I
yeah,
want to real quick just talk about the mental load because we kind of throw that around. But for those unfamiliar with this concept, this is the way that I describe it to people who are unfamiliar is think about dinner, right? If you're gonna eat dinner tonight, great. Well, who's gonna figure out what you're having for dinner? Who's going to check and make sure you have all the ingredients to make whatever it is you're gonna make? Who's going to think about going to the grocery store? Who's going to do the grocery shopping? Who's gonna come home and make sure everything gets put away? Who's going to actually make the food? Who's going to make sure everybody gets the food that they need? Who's going to clean up the dinner? Who's gonna put everything like everything
yeah,
that goes into just dinner? And I feel like that's if you're unfamiliar with that concept, hopefully that idea helps of essentially
yeah.
carrying all of
Well,
the mental labor that goes into it.
yeah. And the book actually calls it CPE. So C,
Yes.
conception, P, planning, and E, execution. And
Yes.
that's where we all go wrong. Because what I was doing was Joseph, my husband, he was doing a lot of the E, just the execution. But I was doing all of the conception, like conceiving. And conception is like realizing that something needs to be done in the
Yes.
first place. And that's like, so dinner, obviously you're going to realize that you need dinner. But
Right.
what about the present for grandma?
Yes.
Like you have to realize that you need a present and then you have to go and buy the present and then you have to give the present to grandma. And so
Yeah.
Joseph was just getting in on the gives the present to grandma bit
Mhm.
and coming out the hero.
Yep.
And it's like, no, 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 no.
I'm sorry,
I was
no.
the I was the one that mentally had to keep track of the fact that grandma needs present.
Right, that it was her
And
birthday or
then,
whatever, yeah.
yeah, and then I needed to go out and like figure out what does grandma want for a present and go and buy it.
Mm.
And then all you had to do was wrap it up and give it to her.
Yeah.
Like that's not you doing the task. I
Right.
did all of the mental load of the
Right,
task.
right, right, exactly, and so it's oh
Yeah.
my goodness, I love that that's thank you for going on that tangent with me, but that's something
Yeah.
I feel so strongly about, and
It's
I
life changing.
it really is. It really, really
Yeah.
is. So if you have never heard of it, go like just go get the book. Just
Mm.
listen. It's great as an audiobook. I listened to it as an audiobook. Yeah, but it is absolutely life-changing. Okay, so this kind of leads me into my next question then that I want to ask you is things have changed. Things have changed dramatically. And the name of the podcast is Reimagining Hustle, right? We're on this quest to reimagine what hustle looks like. And obviously,
Yeah.
like you've reimagined that within your household in the last 6 months, you've reimagined
Yeah.
that with your daughter getting older, with your business shifting a little bit. So
Yeah.
tell me, how are you reimagining hustle these days? What does it look like?
Yeah, it's so funny because it's like I feel like owning a business is just this massive emotional journey, right? And you end up learning a hell of a lot about yourself.
I
And
do.
because it's scary, right? And you have to be constantly stepping into the unknown. And it's like, and you don't know where the paycheck's going to come from. It's
Mhm.
not like you just go to work and you can have an off day and you still get a paycheck.
Right.
You're only ever as good as your last project.
Very
So,
true.
so what I've actually started doing now in terms of reimagining. So, first of all, the whole concept of hustle, I dropped many, many years ago. I know because I'm a sabbatical coach. I literally talk about people taking time out to recharge.
Mhm.
The concept of hustle is like, which is, working and not leaving any time for yourself and like basically just going on the path to burnout. Like, no,
Yeah.
completely let go of that a long time ago. But there's still a whole lot of stuff in the kind of hustle of running a business,
Yeah.
right? That I am constantly needing to reimagine. And I think my latest epiphanies have come out of the sabbatical, but it's really about um, measuring and rewarding myself for the progress rather than the outcomes.
Mm.
And I will circle back as to why that's important for me. So, have you ever heard or read the book Growth Mindset?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, there's this concept of the very fixed mindset, which is very
Yes.
outcome focused and is just very goal orientated, and is just doing everything to get to the goal, but not necessarily enjoying the journey, right? And then growth mindset is like really actually enjoying the path of learning, enjoying and leaning into growth and, you know, being happy with the process of learning and not knowing something and
Yes.
trying and failing and, all of this kind of stuff. Right. So basically, I've always been super fixed mindset. And I'm trying to transition myself to growth mindset, right? And so the best way that I can do that on a daily basis is to try and stop putting my measures of success of myself on the outcomes, but putting my measures of success for myself on just continually taking the steps forward and measuring my success by the process that I'm going through and the progress that I'm making, not the outcome.
Mhm.
So, for instance, um, measuring how many business proposals I've put out there, right, as the key measure of success, rather than how many of those come back and
Mm.
how many of those kind of earn money for me, right? So, and then trying and failing. This is the hardest one for me to not measure my business success by the revenue, you know, in my bank account, but to measure it by the impact that I'm having, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it's it's a massive shift, but by doing that, it actually kind of changes that hustle culture as well because you're actually rewarding the little steps and you're giving yourself a yay
Yeah.
every time you take a little step rather than, giving yourself a yay when you get to this massive sort of goal at the end.
Mhm.
And so I'm not I'm still struggling to do that, but that's what I'm trying to do. And
Oh,
that's my
yeah.
new definition of hustle is like, let's enjoy the journey.
Yes. Oh, and you have explained this so beautifully. And I feel like you really encompass the struggle because it is hard, right? It is hard. And we're living in this very capitalistic world. And so it's hard to be like, well, like we're not going to measure it by the dollars because there's so many voices all around us saying, oh,
Yeah.
I hit a six-figure month or a six-figure year
Yeah.
or blah, blah, blah. I mean, I had someone post on Facebook a couple months ago saying, who's actually making $20,000 in a month and what are you doing? Because I want to be making
Yeah.
$20,000 a month. And my first question was, well, why? Like
Yeah.
what, and so it's interesting to see that and to recognize too that um that shift into that growth mindset, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a slower pace. And for those of us who have really thrived in that fast-paced world, it
Yeah.
feels almost like you were talking about with fair play, right? You almost feel guilty
Yeah.
because you're not doing everything all the time.
It's so interesting that you raise the concept of guilt as well because you're right, it is a slower pace because the other thing that when you take on that mindset, the other thing that happens because you're measuring impact and you're measuring progress. The other thing, rather than dollars, the other thing that happens is that you end up realizing that you need to invest in building the business and putting the solid foundations and like growing relationships, slowly and organically, and like because you're doing this from a delivering value perspective, not just trying to get the sale, right?
Yeah, right.
And so that takes longer. And so you're necessarily having to invest in building a business that you believe will, bear fruit in the months and years to come, rather than going after the quick kind of sale, because then you're just quick. As if you're always going after the quick money or the quick sale, or you're just constantly like, head above water.
Yeah.
And so it requires this period. We haven't really talked about it, but I'm now in the sabbatical. I was reimagining what phase two of the business
Yeah.
looks like. And I had been supporting, or I still am supporting individuals when they're taking on a sabbatical that's a life changing catalyst for change, and supporting them as a coach through that transition in their life and through the helping them redesign their life, right?
Mm.
And using the sabbatical as the impetus to be able to give them the perspective and the insight to make real change. And I still do that, but I realized where I can have greater impact is if I solve this problem at a company level.
Mm.
And so we help getting sabbatical programs for well-being in at the company level. So more people can take sabbaticals, and I can have more impact. We actually start to change. We start to reimagine the hustle culture in a corporate context,
Ugh.
right?
Working
And
smarter, not harder, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And having these periods of deep rest,
Yes.
every couple of years, every 7 years, whatever it might be, allowing people the time and space to actually take the punctuation between parts of their career. And so, but as you know, if you're moving from selling coaching programs to individuals to building relationships with companies, I mean, I've had to take a massive step back in terms of the speed of just the sales cycle of that
Yeah.
is completely different.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sure.
yeah, an individual will take what, a month maybe to come on board. I mean, it's not, I mean, a lot of the time, by the time they contact me, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
It's one call and we're done, right?
It's a like
Or one
already
call and
decision made in their mind that they're
yeah,
doing it.
right.
Mhm.
And but with a corporate, they're even just their budget decision cycles could be, 6 months or whatever. And so I know by putting my focus on my values and having an impact and, doing the thing that I think is the important thing to do,
Mhm.
that I am um, doing the work that I need to do, right? Or the work
Mhm.
that I want to do.
Mhm.
But it takes so much time to build that up, right? And it takes a lot of energy. And so I'm constantly splitting it between, I still support the individuals, but I'm not pushing that as the revenue stream now. I'm pushing this. And so there's less coming in. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, so how do I value my time so that I know that I'm making an investment in the future of the business, um, and basically just trust that that's
Yeah.
gonna come to fruition.
Close your eyes and
Um,
jump, right? That's
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so it's like, okay. So I guess the one way that I've managed that for myself is I've given myself a 6 month kind of deadline
Mm.
of like really pushing into corporates. But the measure of success at the end of that 6 months is not revenue in the bank account, but it's like the positive steps that this is moving in the right direction. And it's like, so basically, if I was to do this for 6 months and um, have have submitted no proposals, had no calls with any HR teams, and sort of no interest,
Yeah.
then I'd be like, okay, I think that's, this is not gonna,
Something's off. Something's not
something's off
clicking.
here. Yeah.
Mhm.
But so that's where it's like measuring the progress rather than the outcome. Because the revenue, if you do the proper things to build the business and you do it in a value aligned um, state where I apply my values of like generosity and impact, um, then I believe that, I will the business will thrive, right?
Yeah.
But it requires that investment. And so, yeah, I'm in that stage where I'm morphing the business from one type to another, basically.
Which is terrifying. It's a
Yeah, it
terrifying
is.
thing. So I would love for you then, would you give us a pep talk? And I
Ah,
think what I really want is, will you give yourself a pep talk and let us listen in?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good question. Right. So I'm going to give myself um, some framework here. So, all right. I am Lyndall at December 2023.
Ooh, okay.
And yeah, and I'm giving myself the pep talk that I need to hear as Lyndall 2022 now.
Yes.
So, all right. So, yeah, basically, I know that it's hard to focus on the progress and just trust that everything is going to flow. But you already have market signals that this is the right direction. And you need to divorce yourself from success being a bank account balance. Success has never been money to you. It's always been about the impact that you have in people's lives and making a difference and doing something that you're actually passionate about doing. If I if you continue to just focus on the easy thing to get money in the bank account, you're not going to be doing the thing that actually means something, that is actually important. You're not going to be doing the important work. So roll up your sleeves, put on your big girl pants, and do the important work. Because if you do the important work, money will flow. It will flow. But you have to be doing the important work just to be able to live in your own skin as a human being. So keep going.
Wendell, I have goosebumps and tears all at the same time. Cool. Pure magic. Pure
That
magic.
was really good. I actually really needed to hear that today.
Okay, but so did I, and I guarantee you people listening to this do as well. The thing that I'm most looking forward to is when I actually like get this all ready to go is I'll send you a couple audiograms, right, for you to share.
Yeah.
And I always do the pep talk as an audiogram, and I'm just gonna like address that one like, dear Lyndall, like this one is for you. Listen to
Yeah,
it every
this
day
one's
from
for
you.
you. Yeah, listen to yourself giving yourself advice. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's so wow, it gives me so much energy too. It's like, yeah, yeah.
Your
I
magic.
feel like it's only the morning time for me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, right, let's
Yeah,
go.
like we're gonna just do this. We're gonna do. Oh my word! I told you I
Yeah.
have like tears in my eyes. I'm like I always have water, but I should put tissues next to me now. Lyndall, oh my goodness, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but I do want to be very respectful of your time and of your sweet family's time as well. So tell us. I know we've met you before, but will you, for those listening to this, tell us where we can find you online? Tell us where we can follow this
Yeah.
journey, and also as you're telling us that if they're, because I know you're working with corporate clients as well. So if anybody's listening to this and they think, oh, I wish my HR manager would just call Lyndall, can you give us just a little bit of a plug there too?
Yeah, for sure. So uh yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out. Not so much Facebook, Instagram. There's a few things there, but basically, yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn and don't feel afraid to send me a message and have a chat. I always love talking about sabbaticals. So, yeah, you can also find everything about what I'm doing, including loads of sabbatical resources, planning guides and calculators and pitch packs for your boss, all on beyondabreak.com. So that's the name of my business, Beyond a Break. Yeah, and in terms of if you really think, yes, we need sabbaticals out of the business, then put me in touch with the person who runs your well-being programs, your employee benefits programs. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk to them about that. So what I do there is basically do a sort of done for you sabbatical program that's going to help the business thrive. And that's because I've been doing this for a while. And so I've pulled together an execution package, an employee toolkit, workshops, everything that a company would need to successfully launch and manage sabbatical in the business. So,
Awesome. 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 And we'll make sure all the links will be in the show notes. Lyndall, I think we're already gonna have to schedule another one because
I know,
I love
right?
this. Like, can we just
I
will you just
know.
come with me every couple of months and we'll just talk more?
Sure.
This has been just like an absolute treat for me. Thank you for emailing me again. Thank you for coming on the show again. Thank you for spending this time with me and with us. Thank goodness, like I said, I adore you. So this is really fun for me.
Well, the feeling is mutual.
Thanks, thanks, thanks. Awesome. Okay, well, make sure you go follow Lyndall, go connect with her on LinkedIn, and hopefully we'll see you on sabbatical very, very soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Reimagining Hustle with Roxanne Market. If you like the show and want more, check out reimagininghustle.com and please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you soon.